NBC's Ali Vitale is here with us on set. Also with us is Jake Sherman, co-founder of Punchbowl News and an MSNBC political contributor. Jake, I will begin with you. Give us your take on Iowa, and if it is this close, whether the Democrats are able to land a seat out there.
Well, Katie, there are two issues to think about here. Number one is the House, where they have two incredibly competitive seats. Marionette Miller Meeks and Zach Nunn are two incumbent Republicans who have drawn visits from both House Speaker Mike Johnson and Hakeem Jeffries, the Democratic leader. Both of those have been absolute, not money sucks, but they've attracted a lot of spending from both of the campaign committees and the super PACs. Now, both parties at this point feel confident that they'll be able to pull it out, which tells you how tight it is. And then there's the question about the presidential, and I've spoken to countless people over the last 24 to 36 hours about that poll, and here's my general takeaway. I guess the question is not whether it's right in, there's the question of whether it's right in total, whether Kamala Harris really does have a chance in a state where there's not been a ton of high-quality polling over this presidential cycle. But number two is the question about whether it's directionally right, whether the issue of abortion in states that, and Steve Kornacki pointed this out on Twitter yesterday, the race has gotten tighter since Iowa passed restrictive abortion laws. So is that A, true? Does that poll reflect reality? And B, is that transposable to other states? And I think that'll be a massive question going into tomorrow, whether those restrictive abortion laws in states that have passed them are dispositive on the election result.
Yeah, that's going to be a big one, isn't it, Ali Vitale? And I think, we can just say that the majority of the polls show the majority of Iowa voters are not where that 6-week abortion ban is. That may be a big part of what you're seeing here. But the question is, where are there similar constituencies that it might be applicable to actual what we consider to be battleground states?
Well, and one of the things that Jake is touching on there is this idea that I've heard generally around Iowa is that they may have governed a little bit too far to the right with the things that they did in their state legislature, be it on abortion, be it on the ways that they've tried to legislate around trans kids in schools and sports. That means that they're squarely at the center of the culture wars there. The story of Iowa is also sort of the story that you can see down ballot in a few other states, though, like Pennsylvania, for example, where the fact that Susan Wild in Pennsylvania's 7th district around the Allentown area, which is important in and of itself, the fact that she's locked in a tight re-election race means even more money is pouring in there. That means that if you're a Democrat, you're basically getting double duty on the message. But of course, the same thing goes for Republicans who are similarly pouring money in to try to unseat her. The same goes for a little bit further up north into that state around the Scranton area. You've got Matt Cartwright playing defense for his seat. All of these different House races mean that there's more money, there's more messaging, and it could be that race that motivates a voter to get out to the polls, even if they're turned off by the presidential.
Let me ask you about the Harrisburg area race, where Scott Perry is such a huge Democratic target because he was a big election denier. They felt on January 6th he was responsible for advocating for the inclusion of that Justice Department official who was so controversial. So, and he's got a strong challenger. Democrats argue, this former anchor woman, Janelle. So what do you think is happening there? Or is that really too big a stretch?
You were an early adopter of this race, Andrea, because this is one now that Democrats are really looking at closely as one that they could possibly flip. It's tough when you get outside the Harrisburg proper area. That being said, again, Harrisburg is an area that if you're looking where Kamala Harris would have to run up her margins, this is a race that could help her do that, because previously Perry's wasn't a seat that Democrats thought they had a shot at. Now, again, if it's a matter of mobilizing just a few extra voters in states where it's going to hinge on inches and razor-thin margins, this could be the thing that does it. And the thing to keep in mind for these House races, Democrats only need to flip 4. I know we keep saying only as if it's an easy metric, but there are enough places on the map that they feel bullish. At the same time, Republicans are feeling very good about their chances, and Speaker Mike Johnson has been vocal about this, that he believes he will be able to retain the gavel. It's been a razor-thin time in Congress anyway, so why not just continue for the election cycle?
So we've talked about a couple of races in Iowa, a race in Pennsylvania. Ali just mentioned the House Speaker feeling pretty good about his prospects. What races are you watching? What do you think is going to be an indicator of what's to come?
Well, Mike Johnson has said he thinks House Republicans can net 13 seats tomorrow night. But the things to watch are as follows. Number one, New York, the state in which you guys are broadcasting, has a number of competitive races all over the state, all the way from Long Island up to the upper part of the state, upstate New York. Mike Lawler, Mark Molinaro, Brandon Williams, all of these could be, if Democrats win all of those seats, that will be a major boon in their quest to take back the majority. I don't think they will win all those seats. Pennsylvania, again, as Ali said, it has a number of competitive seats as well. North Carolina, Don Davis is a lone Democrat. That's a pickup opportunity for Republicans. But I just want to reemphasize here, we may not know about the composition. As Ali said, it's a very close election. So we might not know the eventual margin for weeks if California balloting and reviewing of California races takes some time. Remember, there was a John Duarte who was elected last Congress, who's in another competitive race this year. That race wasn't decided until December. So if you're talking about a two-seat majority and one seat is outstanding or something like that, you might not know the composition of the House of Representatives until sometime many weeks away.